One of the coolest parts about this crazy e-commerce industry is the crazy e-commerce community. There are so many really smart folks that come from so many different backgrounds that never thought they would be doing these businesses and these brands and these services, but they are. There's also just a really strong inclination to look at other things. We're all looking at other ways to make passive income, whether it be the NFT crypto thing going on right now, or real estate, or actually creating services that support the e-commerce industry. Today's guest is one of those people that's been involved in a lot of it and keeps getting involved in more, and we're going to talk about that journey of finding new opportunities. It's going to be a great episode. Listen to the end. Here we go.
What happens when you've grown your Amazon business as much as you can and don't have the time or resources to take it to the next level? That's where Thrasio comes in. Thrasio acquires category-leading FBA brands from small business owners just like you and specializes in taking your brand to new heights while you profit from the growth. When you sell your business to Thrasio, your deal could include a long-term earnout, meaning you profit when your brand grows under their management. So if you're thinking about selling your FBA business, visit thrasio.com/helium10 to connect with Thrasio's deals team. That's THRASIO.com/helium10 for more information on if your brand is a good fit for Thrasio.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the AM/PM podcast. I'm your host, Tim Jordan, and I'm coming to you live, well, not live because it's recorded, but recording live in Salt Lake City, Utah. So not the typical studio here. And I'm here with my good friend, Brandy Hoffman. Say hi, Brandy.
Hi.
Hi. So I flew in yesterday. It is really snowy and really cold, which is a big difference from Southern California. I was at the Helium 10 offices right before I came here. So it was a nice transition to get to see the beauty here. I've never been to this city. But
like you brought the snow.
It's
basically.
like I brought the snow.
Yeah.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
It could be. Definitely didn't bring it from California.
No. We were digging our cars out yesterday, and I'm like, Tim's going to be here, and trying to there was like 3 feet of snow against our car trying to dig out just to see you. So you should feel special.
I
would have worked
special.
from home
I feel
yesterday.
very special. So I met Brandy several months ago, I guess the first half of this year at an e-commerce conference in Chicago. We were all on a riverboat cruise on the Chicago River, and she walked up to me and started talking my ear off. No, I'm just kidding. But she was really talking my ear off. And I thought her story was very interesting, and what her business and what her associates were trying to accomplish was exceptionally interesting. But you, not too long ago, did not think you would be at an e-commerce conference, did you?
I did not, no.
So Brandy is part of a real estate conglomerate. Is that a good word? Yeah. So tell us briefly kind of what the real estate business is. And I think that it's going to be interesting because a lot of our listeners, a lot of e-commerce sellers are always thinking about real estate, whether it's Airbnb stuff or whether it's flipping houses or getting long-term rentals. So talk about the real estate business, and then we'll get into the transfer into e-commerce.
Definitely. So it's interesting because real estate is a lot. I think when I first got into real estate, I thought it was mostly you've got your realtors, you've got your flippers, and maybe, people that do big developments, apartment buildings and stuff. And finding that there's a lot more to it than just, those few basic things. With our business, we buy houses, we do flip houses, we keep some for rentals, for Airbnb, and then we also buy houses if we don't have the bandwidth to flip any more houses or things like that, then we'll sell the house or the contract to somebody who is looking to flip the house or looking for a rental or things like that. And so we've been doing that for about 6 years, and we, because of that, we get to work with a lot of people in the community, other people who do wholesaling or who flip houses. You just end up having a lot of the same context. Real estate does the same thing. There's real estate conferences, just like there is e-commerce conferences, and everybody kind of gets to know each other and work together. And although you might be in competition, you're also like sharing ideas, and there's masterminds with real estate and things like that. So what it really did is it taps you into a network of other business professionals that are trying to make money and learn of ways to invest and other things that we can do. So, real estate's a lot of fun, and I've learned a lot about, housing markets and how you really can gauge, what properties are worth and what is make sense to invest in and stuff like that. I mean, oftentimes people think of having a rental, but right now we're seeing that really having an Airbnb makes the most sense. You're making more money off of having an Airbnb or something like that. So there's other platforms other than Airbnb that you can use as well. But, so we've been pivoting a lot to that rather than just having traditional landlord rentals and things like that. And
so being involved in this community of people trying to make a buck, trying to find passive income, this crazy term called e-commerce came up, right? So talk briefly about your kind of introduction and your first, realization of what e-commerce was and how to make money doing that.
Right. So one of the guys that we work with here had been interested in getting involved in e-commerce. And there were a few other people in the real estate space who had been dabbling with either getting their own stores or products of some sort, whether it be on Walmart or Amazon. And so we kind of started doing some research and dipping our toes into what that would look like and how, because passive income is really where everybody wants to be. If I cannot go to work and still be making money or maybe only work like a few hours a day, I mean, that's everybody's dream, I think. And so and that's what the nice thing about real estate is you can buy a rental, flipping, I wouldn't say is passive. It's a lot of work. I think it's you watch those shows and it seems like, oh, I would love to do that. It's so exciting.
Joanna Gaines is full of crap.
Yeah, it is not that fun. I mean, there's a lot of problems that go wrong with it, a lot of babysitting and stuff, but just simple, acquiring real estate for investment purposes, for tax purposes and write-offs and things, it's pretty passive. And so we've always been interested in finding more things like that where we can invest money and still, not have to put in a ton of time into the venture. So, we had been introduced into e-commerce as maybe an opportunity to, invest some more money. There's a lot of people in real estate who have, it's the end of the year right now. We have a lot of people scrambling to find more rental properties to purchase for tax purposes. And we're like, well, what if we can find a better way to use this money that people are ready to invest and want to do something with. And so we kind of started looking into the e-commerce space. And for us, my thought was we'll just jump into going to some of these conferences and seeing what we can learn and find out. And that's kind of where, after we had talked to a few people who were doing the same thing and selling online, it seemed to be something that I felt that we could do and would make sense for the people that we work with.
So you got to experience, well, maybe not experience, but meander into all of the different types of e-commerce, especially on marketplaces like Amazon. So the reselling, the drop shipping, the wholesale side, and then you really landed on private label as your objective, right? Like this is the holy grail. If we can find product opportunities, we can launch them, we can build them up, we can get some cash, and we can eventually sell these businesses.
Well,
right?
and exactly. There's arbitrage and drop shipping, and really, if you're looking at it from taking a step back, it's okay. I'm going to get the best ROI if I'm doing a private label business, and it just seems to make the most sense. Now, it does seem to be a little bit more work, but again, I don't think I've ever really been scared off by that as where other people are. I think when starting a new business, most people are like, oh my gosh, I have to, set up tracking services and set up all these accounts, and I have to get a new bank account and a new LLC, and who's going to do the taxes? And I mean, it's everything. How am I going to manufacture a product? Where am I going to get? And I think just the thought of that is overwhelming to most people. And so they back away from it. But after talking to some people who, were selling online and selling successfully, I was like, we can do this. Like, this is something with the right planning that is possible. And we could probably help other people do this as well.
So the whole idea of private label is, we were talking just off camera, like it's complex, but it's not complicated. It's a lot of moving pieces, but none of them are particularly hard. You just have to put them together. So you have to have systems, you have to have processes. And I have never seen anybody dive into it as deeply as your team did. Like, you've now got multiple VAs that do product research, and then they pass it up the chain for validation, and then it goes through the whole sourcing process and the development process. And it's pretty cool. But I don't really want to talk about private label. I want to talk about the thing that came after that, right? Which is Easy Cheetah, which is a prep, fulfillment, and warehousing business.
Yes.
And the reason I want to talk a little bit about that is because obviously you found an opportunity. You said, hey, here's something else that needs to be addressed in the market. As if we don't have enough going on already. Right. Like, we want to dive into this. Right. And I think it's an interesting conversation to have, because I see this all the time, like e-commerce entrepreneurs that are diving into this space that realize, hey, there's other stuff to be done than just building a product and selling that product, right? You look at all the software companies, all the logistics companies, the insurance companies, the accounting services that are specifically geared towards e-commerce. You look at the consultants, the PPC managements. I know a lot of people that were miserable private label sellers, but they were really good at branding, like one piece. Or they could not source a product to save their lives, but they could run the crap out of some PPC, right? And I think that maybe our ego or our pride gets in the way of taking advantage of maybe some of our strengths, these opportunities, because we think, hey, I got into e-commerce to build a brand and sell it, but I can't give up on that. I can't get distracted. But some of the most successful people that I know in the e-commerce space were not necessarily successful because they built a product and sold it. They were successful because they found their niche, or they found this other business, or they were able to support other sellers with their specialized skills, right? So Easy Cheetah came to be because either you felt you were good at this or you saw a demand in the space.
So we saw a demand in the space. We kept hearing about, everybody's problems with 3PL services. Everybody's backed up.
The warehouses are full. Nobody's taking shipments.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so I immediately, after asking a few people, like, hey, do you think that this is doable? Is this something, or are we going to get way in over our head if we try to open up our own 3PL service? And the feedback we got was, no, I think you can do it. And I think part of that is because, we have set up some businesses before, but, it's more putting those processes in place where you could really set up any business, I think, if you have the right processes set up.
So you've already got teams, you've already got systems, you've already got all of this stuff in place, where it seems like that made it a little bit easier to tack on another business. Do you think that made it easier, or do you think you would have been less likely to try to open up a business like this if you just had to start from ground zero and you didn't have all of this infrastructure in place already? Do you think that made a difference?
One of the people I work with, Dane, talked to me about this, and it's really about who you have and the connections and the people that make or break a business, I believe. There's a book, I think it's called Who Not How, and we're total supporters of it. So, I haven't ever been afraid to jump out and ask questions, talk to people who are doing what we're trying to do. So, I think that it helps that we have a general understanding of how Amazon works and the shipping processes works for not just Amazon, but any marketplace. And we made sure to hire, for example, warehouse manager that has experience and has been in it in the past. But, if you are able to align the right people in the right positions, then starting any new venture isn't that hard, because you have enough faith that they'll be able to carry out the things that need to happen. So, I give the warehouse manager everything that they needed to set up, getting all of the products and the supplies and equipment and accounts that we're going to need. And then we make sure that we have, an operations team that's able to set up all of the accounts and the services the service providers we're going to have to work with. And, as long as you have the right people that are, and then we're getting into consulting and making sure that we're not missing anything. And that if we are, okay, how do we tackle that? And so I think it's just decreasing the responsibility into, breaking that up
into bite-sized
chunks amongst people that are comfortable with tackling that kind of stuff. Like if you give a visionary a job of opening a bunch of accounts, the Dane who we work with, he's the visionary of the company. He's the one out, making huge connections and seeing what our next project is. I've definitely always been more of an integrator personality where you give me, hey, I want to do this. I'll sit down and be able to say, hey, this is how we're going to get it done and put those processes in place, And so I think it's just making sure that you're playing to your strengths. If you're a visionary type of personality, then you need to make sure that you get an integrator in on your business to get things going, because what ends up happening is you just aren't getting those essential kind of tasks completed that have to get done,
So you're looking at, your processes and your team to build these physical products businesses. You see an opportunity to create a service, which actually is going to help you in the long run because you're able to support your own businesses. Mm-hmm. But was there a time when you thought, we're crazy for trying to take on too much? Or was it like, hey, this just feels good, it's a good fit, let's just jump in?
I think it's a little bit of both. Like, I have experienced being stressed about this, and we still have our real estate business going. We are, still researching product and doing that, getting stores going on Amazon and brands built on Amazon. And then we also have the warehousing. So there's times where it feels like, oh my gosh, should we bite off more than we can chew? But we always fall back on the fact that, yeah, if I have these processes in place, everything's going to be fine. It's going to work out, what's interesting is along the way, and I think being open to doing different things. I feel like in this last 5 years, I wouldn't say an expert, but close to a real estate expert. I'll have experience with, with warehousing and shipping. I feel like pretty confident in product research capabilities. I mean, you learn so much that will end up helping you in the end with any business that I do, that I feel it's important to branch out, you know what I mean? Rather than just be stuck.
So you're saying that it's not just a liability, like getting into this other business isn't like, oh, I'm just splitting more of my time, I'm opening myself up to more risk, but it's like, oh, I'm also getting an education.
Oh,
so by jumping in, it's the stuff that I learn is going to continue helping the other businesses.
100%.
Right?
And it's interesting because as you start talking to attorneys or CPAs about how you can integrate all of these businesses and how things work, it's you realize the benefit also financially and kind of branching out and what that can do for your business in the long term. Like now, when we were looking for warehouse space here, or if we ever wanted to purchase an additional space, we have a leg up because of our connections in the the way that we were able to get the space that we have now is just from the connections from our real estate business, and so that made, which anybody can go do, but it made that process much easier and run more smoothly. And so it's ended up helping that they support each other.
So let's talk about location.
Okay.
All right. Because you're based here in Salt Lake City. This is where everything is at. You knew that the world needed more 3PL warehousing prep fulfillment space.
Right.
But you're not on the coast.
Right.
And I have an answer to this. I know how I feel about it because I owned a similar company before I sold it. And I was in North Alabama, like the weirdest place in the world to bring containers in, but we were doing it. Talk a little bit about the excitement that you continued to build as you researched maybe how a non-traditional import location is actually more valuable, right? And just to set the context, everybody that's in e-commerce knows that the logistics over the past 18 months has been a dumpster fire, right? When I was in Orange County, Southern California earlier this week, there's still 100 ships parked outside of Long Beach port that can't get in and unload because everything's still backed up. So why did you think that Salt Lake City would be okay to import products for e-commerce sellers?
That's a good question. So it's interesting because I wouldn't have ever thought about Salt Lake City. I don't think a lot of people think of it as kind of a hub for much of anything except for as it's Mormons, So, but as Salt Lake's actually been planning an inland port for quite some time now. I think it's been since 2016. Because of we not only do we have a large international airport, we have a Union Pacific hub here. We also have two major highways. We have I-15, which runs north and south, so from Canada to Mexico. And then we have I-80, which runs from coast to coast. And so we're in our positioning as far as transportation is concerned is excellent. So
for trucking, rail, and air, you're set up.
Correct.
And even like ships coming into Oakland, you're only a one-day drive away from the port of Oakland at San Francisco area, even if they have to put a container on the ship. So coming inland is good, but for distribution, you're like the perfect spot. You can get over the mountains easy. You can go north, south. You cover all the West Coast.
Right.
Right.
Well, and with how backed up the ports are, even if you were to have your stuff come in, if you wanted it processed at Oakland or San Diego, by the time the goods got to Salt Lake City and got processed, it would still be faster than the way the timing is right now on the ports. They've got hundreds of containers just pyramided up on these, processing ports. So it's still faster right now to have something shipped to an inland port than it is to have it and processed to an inland port than it is to have it processed at
So for people that are thinking, hey, like I might not be set up for this, and the example I see is people that have a great idea of a service that needs to be fulfilled, but they know nothing about software. Like when there's an opportunity, there are opportunities, right? When there's opportunities, you'll find a way around those. So if I were going to create a software company, I can barely write an email, then there are huge networks of people that I could collaborate with or partner with or hire that can handle that. When you think that, oh, why would I choose to build a fulfillment center and service inland, a 12-hour drive from the port? Why would I do this? You start researching and find out, well, you're actually like in prime positioning, and even the city has been investing in infrastructure to make that more possible. So if I look back at my friends in the industry or successful businesses in the industry, they could have easily told themselves a lot of reasons why something wouldn't work. But when you actually dive into it, you find out, hey, these opportunities are usually pretty easy to overcome. Like there's a lot more opportunity than we thought. So now going forward, you've got e-commerce brands, you've got real estate business, you've got a prep warehouse, fulfillment, distribution center. How do you prioritize your day or balance your day to prioritize which one is most important?
I heavily rely on the people that we have in each business to make sure that everything that has to get done is getting done. I mean, prioritizing is big. If you don't have somebody on your team that can prioritize which tasks need to be completed for each business first, I think you'll be in trouble. But the biggest thing is also, it was really hard for me, and I think this happens with a lot of business owners, is to delegate things. For the longest time, we hired this person who is amazing, and I call him my Mandy. He's like the clone of me, but in a male version, and I've been so happy.
Oh, I get it. Yeah. So Mandy is the male Brandy?
Brandy, yeah. And
even though Mandy's a female name?
It is a female.
It doesn't quite work, but I'm following. Keep going.
I mean, it's like, right. It's the best I could come up with, okay? So he's just like the top notch, the best hire I ever could have made. He was sent from God. And so even then, knowing his capabilities and everything, I found myself like, oh, why don't I want to give this up? And Dane talked to me a few times about like, Brandy, this is impeding the flow of our business. You have got to let some stuff go. Like you have to. And it's been such a good lesson for me to learn, because not only have I been able to free up my time, to grow the business, which I was, there was so much stuff that I was so stressed about, like, what if it doesn't get right? Or what if this gets done wrong? That I really was stopping us from growing and being better as a business. And so, we've really utilized the hiring of virtual assistants. I know Tim's talked about this before, but I'm such a proponent. I think the same thing. I was really nervous about, and we've also used them in real estate, because you're nervous about, oh, well, what if they aren't able to speak English enough, or it doesn't go well, or we lose out on money because we haven't trained a VA well. And what I'm finding is that you can find a VA to do just about anything. And there's obviously some stuff that you want to keep in-house. For me, it's super important. We don't work remotely. We have our core team that gets together every single day. And it is so important that we have that face-to-face stuff, especially when running 3 different businesses. We just have to have people available, and the brainstorming that occurs, you just can't duplicate it, when you're in. And, Salt Lake, I don't think has also experienced a lot of obviously we've had COVID the same as everywhere else and things like that. But, the culture here and the legislature here has been really big about keeping things moving in spite of COVID, and what we can do to do that safely, and giving, a lot of autonomy to businesses to be able to make decisions on how they're going to handle that themselves and things like that. And so we didn't really see the same kind of slowdown that you would see on the news, on the East Coast or the West Coast of, businesses shutting down and a bunch of people losing their job. I mean, I just feel like it seemed like Salt Lake, and I don't have data to back this up, obviously,
this is just your gut feeling.
Just my experience from living here is, things have really been operating as normal for quite some time here, and so I haven't seen a ton of labor shortages. We don't, even now. So I feel pretty lucky that we've been able to do all this living in Salt Lake, because it's just a great place to operate a business out of, and so we've really haven't had to deal, with what I think a lot of other people have had to deal with when it comes to that. Now we still have to experience the same things with manufacturing and that the whole rest of the world has to deal with, but we're hoping to be able to help relieve some of that pressure on the e-com business by starting our own shipping company, And so, yeah, we're excited about that.
So let's talk about e-commerce in general. Like you have been crushing it in real estate. Mm-hmm. You've done very well with flips, with like wholesaling properties, with the Airbnb and rental investments. Why is e-commerce so exciting to you that you want to point a lot of your resources and time and effort into that as opposed to just continuing to scale up?
So first of all, one of the biggest culture item in our company is like trying to help people. And I know that seems odd because as like a capitalistic running business, you don't, sometimes I think that it's easy to lose sight of that. But, our mission has always been, we try to do that with our employees. Like, what can we do to better your life? A lot of our team meetings are based around what do you want to do? Like, what goals are you trying to accomplish? Like, so starting from there into the business relationships that we have are very much centered around like, what can we do to help somebody out here or bring them aboard? And so the same thing goes with our clients. It's very important that we wanted to find or start something that was beneficial and useful to people that would make their lives better. Like everybody here, I think it's really easy to meet anybody in any industry, but it still even happens in e-commerce where you have people selling you something that is not sustainable, not what it is meant to be or chalked up to be. And so it's been super important that we find an opportunity that is actually going to be beneficial and helpful for our clients. And what's so exciting about e-com is the return on your investment that you put into it. Like that, first of all, let's get the money out of the way. You can do really well if you set up and manage a brand. But also that I think that it's that anybody can do it. It's not something that is, just for people who have had experience with selling online in the past or just for existing business owners. I think we've been able to, we can pull anybody here that's interested in getting into e-com into it and helping them as well. So, I think the thing like you talked about is really networking and trying to find some services here that being willing to outsource where you can. I think that anybody that tries to take this all in one bite, that I'm going to do the PPC and I'm going to manage all the customer service emails and I'm going to source all the products and contact manufacturers myself. I mean, you got to scrap that. I think the biggest thing is just outsourcing where we can find agencies that can do things better than we can. And then, if there's something for us like that we thought we could do a good job at, then we're going to try to take that on ourselves.
So your opinion is just keep looking. Yeah. Like just keep expanding, take it on, try to drink from a fire hose. And if it sucks, it sucks. But if you don't at least look for the next new thing, you might miss a big opportunity. And I think I agree with that. I definitely spread myself too thin sometimes, but there are so many people that I know that are succeeding because they tried the next thing. Like they didn't stick with something that they were going to continue to struggle with, or they jumped to the next big opportunity. I'm not saying big opportunity being the next get rich quick scheme, but I'm saying, hey, if you're really good at PPC, figure out how to do PPC for other people. If you are exceptionally good at understanding, I've used the example of Ari and Chelsea Cohen before. Like they are still sellers, but the majority of the time they're spending on building SoStock, which is a great software tool that everybody's raving about and loves. And if they hadn't taken a chance to like continue to try the next thing or expand their portfolio of opportunities, like that never would have happened. And I think that's going to be, a bigger investment or a bigger turnover on their investment or a bigger payout on their investment than maybe staying in the trenches with physical products. I don't know. So I think it's good advice. So if there's anybody listening to this podcast and they're thinking, hey, I am doing this, but I think there's another opportunity here, what would be your advice to them on how to analyze those opportunities to determine, hey, should I take a risk and keep moving on to the next thing?
ask people. I mean, I think that people's biggest downfall is being afraid to talk to someone in the industry or start getting on Facebook groups and asking questions. You'd be surprised how much information there is out there on YouTube and Facebook groups. Get to understand what you're doing more. I mean, I think we've watched countless hours before we started the warehouse service on about shipping and 3PL and just trying to get as knowledgeable about the process as possible. And I think that my first inclination is that people aren't going to want to talk to me about what they're doing if I'm looking at building a business that is in competition to them. And that's absolutely not been the case for us. I think most people love to talk about their industry. They love to talk about what they do. They're actually a lot more open to sharing advice and kind of helping out than you would think. And it's pretty refreshing. And so ask some questions. And after you've done your research and asked some questions, if you still think it's something you want to do, get the right people. And, it might cut into your profit margins at first to hire. And I think people oftentimes are like, oh, I don't know if I can hire somebody right now. I don't know if I have like the funds to make it work. I would say as soon as possible, if you can make it work, even if you're making like almost nothing in the beginning, you need to get good talent. Final thing also is if you hire somebody on and they're not working out, do not be afraid to cut that relationship and move on, because the last thing you need is to be pulling somebody along when you're trying to start a business that you don't think is really going to work out in the end. And then you're investing all this time, all this money into getting somebody going when you know in the back of your mind, this isn't going to work. We've made that mistake before where it's not there's anything wrong with the person. We could just tell this isn't going to be a good fit. We could tell that maybe we're going to need somebody with some different capabilities, and we waited way too long to cut the cord just because you feel bad. But this is business. You are trying to do something different for yourself. You're trying to build a successful business here, and who you have and what you have them doing is important. If that's you're going to make it.
Be slow business. To hire and fast to fire, which is not something I'm particularly good at.
And you can be nice.
You can be nice about it, but still. All right. Well, that's cool. That's a lot of good information. I think that it's valuable to kind of pick your brain on these thoughts, because I know a lot of you listening struggle with this, struggle with trying to think of what's the new thing, what's the next thing, what should we be focusing on? Are we stuck too deep in the trenches, not thinking about something else? If we have a good idea, should we expand to it? Should we try to experiment with it? Or do we do this in conjunction with an existing business, or do we stop our old business to go to this? Like, it's a lot of stuff to think about. But I've said it before already in this episode, but I'll keep saying it. Some of the most successful people that I know have taken on more challenges and more opportunities and have found more success by juggling a couple of different things, especially if they're related, and they just keep feeding on themselves. It takes a lot of time for me to do this podcast, but it's also an investment because I learn from having these conversations, right? Every business that I've started has been a struggle, but it always supports existing businesses, or existing businesses will support it. So it's like this crazy flywheel that keeps ramping up. So, Brandy, I appreciate you. I know you're very busy. I appreciate you taking some time to talk about this stuff. And I guess if anybody wanted more information about what you've got going on in the logistics space, go to easycheetah.com, EasyCheetah, right? Did I do that right? EasyCheetah.com. Primary location located in Salt Lake City, which, as you said, is actually an interesting place that a lot of people are not thinking about. So thank you all for being on the episode. Again, I'll ask you, as I always do, or typically do, if you found any value in this, make sure to leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. If you're watching this on YouTube, again, forgive us for not having the big fancy studio, as I am in the field, so to speak, in Salt Lake City. But give us a thumbs up on that YouTube video if you would. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. We'll see all of you on the next episode.